Cuban Revolution. Explore. The Cuban Revolution was a pivotal event in the 20th century, marking the overthrow of the government of Fulgencio Batista on January 1, 1959. It was led by Fidel Castro and his 26th of July movement, which included key figures like Che Guevara and Raúl Castro XII. Background and causes. The revolution had its roots in the dissatisfaction with the Batista regime, which was seen as corrupt and oppressive. Batista had seized power in a coup in 1952, canceling elections and establishing a dictatorship too. This act prompted widespread discontent among various segments of Cuban society, including students, intellectuals, and peasants. Early stages. The first significant act of rebellion was the failed assault on the Moncada barracks on July 26, 1953. Although the attack was not successful, it became a symbolic starting point for the revolution. Castro's famous "A History Will Absolve Me" speech during his trial for the attack laid out his manifesto for Cuba's future too. Guerrilla warfare. After being released from prison under an amnesty deal, Castro went into exile in Mexico, where he organized a group of revolutionaries. In December 1956, they landed in Cuba aboard the yacht Granma and began a guerrilla war from the Sierra Maestra mountains. Over the next 2 years, they gained support from the rural population and other anti-Batista groups too. Final offensives and victory. By late 1958, the revolutionaries had gained enough strength to launch a final offensive against Batista's forces. Key battles in Santa Clara and other cities led to the collapse of the government's resistance. On January 1, 1959, Batista fled the country, and Castro's forces took control of Havana I. Aftermath. The immediate aftermath of the revolution saw significant changes in Cuban society, with the new government implementing agrarian reform, nationalizing industries, and promoting social policies. These actions, along with the alignment with the Soviet Union, led to the deterioration of relations with the United States, culminating in the Bay of Pigs invasion and the Cuban Missile Crisis I. The Cuban Revolution had profound effects on Cuba and the wider world, influencing other revolutionary movements and altering the dynamics of the Cold War. It remains a subject of study and debate, with its legacy continuing to shape Cuba's national identity and policies. 12.
Che Guevara's contribution to the Cuban Revolution was multifaceted and significant. He was not only a theoretician and tactician of guerrilla warfare, but also a prominent communist figure who played a key role in the success of the Revolution. 1. Military role. Guevara joined Fidel Castro's 26th of July movement in Mexico in 1955. Together with a small group of rebels, they set sail for Cuba aboard the yacht Granma in 1956. Once in Cuba, they established a base in the Sierra Maestra mountains. Guevara's military tactics were crucial. He was a skilled guerrilla fighter who could outmaneuver Batista's forces in the rugged terrain. His leadership helped to build support among the Cuban people and weaken the dictatorship. 12. Political influence. Beyond his military prowess, Guevara was deeply involved in the political and social aspects of the revolution. He advocated for land reform, the nationalization of industry, and the establishment of a communist state. His socialist ideologies influenced the direction of the revolution and the policies implemented by the new government. 1. Governmental roles. After the revolution's victory, Guevara took on significant responsibilities in the new government. He served as the president of the National Bank of Cuba and later as the Minister of Industries. In these roles, he was instrumental in implementing social and economic policies, such as the literacy campaign and the National Institute of Agrarian Reform, which aimed to redistribute land to the peasantry. 1. Che Guevara's role in the Cuban Revolution was complex and sometimes controversial, but his impact on the revolution's military and political success was undeniable. His legacy continues to be celebrated in Cuba and by many around the world as a symbol of resistance and social justice. 1. Explore. Che Guevara was a central figure in the Cuban Revolution and served as second-in-command to Fidel Castro. His relationship with Castro and other revolutionary leaders was generally one of solidarity and shared purpose in the fight against the Batista regime. 1. However, like any large-scale movement involving strong personalities and differing ideologies, there were occasional disagreements and conflicts. Guevara's unwavering commitment to Marxist principles sometimes led to ideological clashes with more moderate members of the movement. His role in the post-revolutionary government also put him at odds with others as he pushed for rapid and extensive social and economic reforms too. Despite these conflicts, Guevara's influence and leadership were crucial to the success of the Cuban Revolution. His vision of a socialist society and his dedication to the cause of global revolution left a lasting impact on Cuba and inspired many other movements around the world. 3. It's important to note that while there were disagreements within the revolutionary ranks, the shared goal of overthrowing Batista's dictatorship kept the movement cohesive enough to achieve its objectives. 12. Che Guevara's revolutionary zeal and ideological purity often led to disagreements with other leaders, both within Cuba and in the broader international communist movement. Here are some specific areas where conflicts arose. Economic policy. Guevara had a vision for Cuba's economic development that differed from others in the leadership. He advocated for a rapid nationalization and centralization of the economy, which clashed with the more pragmatic approaches favored by Soviet advisors and some Cuban officials. His push for accelerated industrialization and diversification away from sugar production led to economic difficulties and disagreements with leaders like Carlos Rafael Rodriguez. 1. Soviet alignment. Guevara was critical of the Soviet Union's approach to socialism and was opposed to Fidel Castro's alignment with the USSR during the Sino-Soviet split. He favored a more militant and independent path for Cuba, which sometimes put him at odds with the more Soviet-aligned members of the Cuban government. 1. Internationalism versus local focus. Che's commitment to international revolution led him to support uprisings and guerrilla movements in other countries, which sometimes conflicted with the Cuban government's focus on domestic issues and its relationship with the Soviet Union. This difference in focus was evident in his involvement in conflicts in the Congo and Bolivia, where he sought to replicate the Cuban model of revolution. 2. Guerrilla warfare. Guevara's belief in the primacy of armed struggle as a means to achieve socialist revolution was not shared by all. His disregard for specific political contexts and his focus on guerrilla tactics were at odds with other leaders who favored a more political approach. For example, when he met with Mario Monge, the leader of the pro-Moscow Bolivian Communist Party, Monge contrasted Guevara's focus on armed struggle with his own emphasis on political action. 2. These disagreements highlight the complex dynamics within the revolutionary movement and the challenges of aligning various leaders' visions for the future of Cuba and the global socialist movement. Che's unwavering commitment to his principles often put him at the forefront of these debates, contributing to his legacy as a symbol of revolutionary idealism and action. 21. Ernesto Che Guevara's economic policies in Cuba had both positive and controversial consequences. Let's delve into the impact of his economic initiatives. Land reform and nationalization. Positive consequences. Guevara advocated for land reform, aiming to redistribute land to the peasantry. This policy sought to address historical inequalities and empower rural farmers. Controversies. The nationalization of industry and the creation of a communist state were part of Guevara's vision. While this led to greater state control, it also faced criticism for stifling private enterprise and individual freedoms. 1. Literacy program. Positive consequences. Guevara played a role in implementing the literacy program, which aimed to eliminate illiteracy in Cuba. This initiative significantly improved education and empowered citizens. Controversies. Critics argue that the program was used for ideological indoctrination, emphasizing loyalty to the revolution. 1. Industrialization and economic dependency. Positive consequences. Guevara's push for industrialization aimed to diversify Cuba's economy beyond sugar production. This was essential for long-term sustainability. Controversies. Cuba's heavy reliance on sugar exports, often controlled by American interests, limited its economic diversification. The quota system on Cuban sugar imports imposed by the United States affected Cuba's economic growth. 2. Criticism and repression. Positive consequences. Guevara's commitment to social justice inspired many and contributed to Cuba's revolutionary spirit. Controversies. His ruthless tactics, including the execution of prisoners, repression of dissenting voices, and persecution of homosexuals, remain highly controversial. Some argue that these actions compromised democratic principles and human rights. 13. In summary, Che Guevara's economic policies had a profound impact on Cuba. While some initiatives brought positive changes, others faced criticism and raised ethical questions. His legacy remains complex, celebrated by some as a hero of the revolution and criticized by others for the methods employed during his tenure. 1.